Hi, I'm Dave Edwards. I've been fortunate enough to get to talk to David Allen about productivity and a lot of related issues. As you probably know, David is the author of the book Getting Things Done and an entire way of approaching productivity. Today, I get to share another part of a recent conversation I had with David. If you like these segments, please subscribe and turn on your alerts so that whenever I post these periodic segments, you'll get notified and won't miss any of them. One of the cornerstones of getting things done methodology is that we review all of our lists, our projects, and our next actions on a weekly basis. But sometimes it's also good to review all of our productivity systems. In my ongoing conversations with David Allen, I asked him if he periodically has to do a mega review of all of his systems.
It depends. Depends on whether I need to really redo all of that. When Catherine and I just moved into a new place we bought in Amsterdam, and it's taken a year to renovate this and to be able to then structure and set up my new office. And just setting up the new office had I had tons of backlog of files and reference material and so forth that I needed to go through. Should I keep it? Should I not keep it? Or whatever. And that forces essentially a kind of a rethink, of the whole game. So I think sometimes just moving or just changing your ecosystem, if you will, whether you have to or whether you decide to or not, that's an automatic trigger to do that kind of deeper dive or deeper think about all of that. Also, migrating into Office 365, which we did in our small little company, we just did that this last year. Doing that because all of my reminder systems and lists and a whole lot of my reference system digitally was in other things besides OneNote, besides Office 365 and Outlook. So migrating into all of that forced me to rethink a lot of that stuff. So a lot of it, it wasn't like I sat down and said, I need to rethink everything, out of scratch. It was just like, here's an opportunity or a necessity essentially to rethink what do I really want to move that from, for instance, I migrated from Evernote into OneNote. But that was a lot of stuff that I,
Yeah.
parked in there just ad hoc. I just thrown in there, whatever. Do I really want to do that? I don't know. So that caused a rethink to begin with. So I haven't, done a whole lot of rigorous rethinking of that. You've probably heard me talk about this, Catherine and I, every year. We still need to do that for this last year, is do kind of a completion list of everything we did in the previous year. And we just keep that on the list. We've done that for, I don't know, 15 years.
hmm
And then what would we like to have on that list, the end of 2022? And, that's kind of, it's kind of a informal rethink as opposed to some big sit down rethink my life, but again, because we tend to, think and sort of outcome focus and, I guess because, I don't know, Dave, I guess because I just have this sort of GTD stuff in my DNA, you know, it's not a big deal. It's something that I think we need to do and ought to do, and won't happen by itself. You have to put a little bit of creative energy into doing those kinds of reviews and renegotiations with yourself.
hmm
Um, I don't know if was that a big non-answer to your question?
No, no, no. It was very, very helpful. Someone once told me that if you really want to stay organized, you should move like every 2 years because that forces you to do exactly what you're
Sure.
describing.
Or go live on a sailboat. That'll do it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But you said something there which really prompted this for me because this came up in my now annual mega review. I started looking at digital versus paper. I'm an Evernote guy. I have everything. I have a lot of stuff in Evernote, but I also have these file cabinets next to me, and a lot of stuff goes in there, and a lot of stuff goes in Evernote, and it really got me thinking about what should go where, and also, do I really need all this junk? Because I tend to collect everything, and digitally, it's so easy to collect everything, but then you just got this huge reference file system. And that was my biggest thing, that I had to kind of put some parameters around what I keep for reference.
Somebody described Evernote as write only because I never looked at anything they put in there. They just dump.
Well,
It's
I
a
mean,
black hole that's just
in
collecting all that.
fairness, my entire productivity system is based in Evernote. I mean, I have everything in there. All my lists are in Evernote, so it is very much a part of my daily life.
Yeah.
My question for you was reference materials, whether they're digital or analog. I mean, do you set parameters around what you keep and what you don't keep, and how you know if this
You
article
know,
that will ever matter to you
it's
again?
kind of, again, I've just redone my office. So let me, move my screen over. So uh, alpha filing system, 2 drawers. Used to be 4 drawers, but now because I can digitalize a lot of stuff, but there's still a lot of stuff that's a lot easier to keep in paper than it is in digital form. My contracts with my publisher, Penguin, right? If somebody asked me about that, I guarantee you it's a lot easier to pull out this file and look through it than it is to try to look through it digitally.
Yeah.
What else is here? We've got a long-term healthcare policy with Prudential, and what am I going to do? File their what this is in some digital form? I don't think so. It changes every year anyway, so I just throw it out. So, and passport, I still keep, my sort of the expenses for my 2 companies here. It's a lot easier to keep this in paper form because my accountants here often ask, David, where was that? And do you have a copy of that? I guarantee you this is a whole lot easier to use than to try to surf the computer for it. So there are certain things that are still, again, much less than it ever used to be, because again, a lot of stuff is in PDF form. But my limitation is how much room do I have? Basically, and it's much like, move into a sailboat and force you to decide how much you think you want to keep, in that way. So, for instance, how long do you keep financial files? Well, you need to do a records retention timetable to see, how many things you really need to keep in case the IRS or whatever your local, tax people, if they ever come after you for any reason, how many of those things do you need to keep? And, again, that's a lot easier to have in paper-based form. I've still got versions of it in PDF form, but even when I was not doing much of that these days, but meeting with clients or meeting with people or whatever, it's a whole lot easier to have a folder with the 6 or 7 or 10 or 12 documents relative to our conversations going up to that meeting, as well as their contract and so forth, than to try to sit there with a computer and try to find all that stuff at once. So it's a lot easier. The paper has a great advantage to it that it's a lot easier to see a larger context of information and data than it is on the computer. Even if you have 2 huge screens on your desk and have all kinds of windows open, all that's going to be is more confusing than it is helpful, for the most part.
I think I migrated more to a digital format because literally I was working in 2 different cities for a while. I mean, you mentioned my association with NPR, and I was here in Milwaukee, and then I was in Washington, D.C., and I needed a file that was in Milwaukee when I was in D.C., and that's what kind of forced me into a digital environment. But I get exactly what you mean. There is the simplicity of paper that is very attractive. Outside of the location problem, I think I would much prefer paper. I'm actually more surprised that those are the only files you have. I'd be embarrassed to show you my 2 big file cabinets right now.
Sorry, I was on mute. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just space issue.
Yeah.
Come on. So what? Just buy another apartment or buy another house and keep as much as you want. Because as long as there's nothing, as you have no attention that there's stuff in there that might be something you need or would or could should do something about, then it's just reference. It's like a library. It's like Google. It's like, so what?
Hmm.
Nothing wrong with that.
Do you ever find
It's,
that, I mean,
it's
I'm
actually a
sorry.
very creative process to go back and curate all that stuff, though.
Hmm. How do you decide whether or not, if you get something, it's in paper, do you ever say, "Oh, I'll scan this because it should be better in my digital system as opposed to my file"? How do you make that
Yeah,
decision?
piece by piece.
No grant, no
Usually
grant
these
credit.
days, because I've structured OneNote to be pretty much like we used to use Lotus Notes, which was, a shared database, with my wife, and so I have a personal database, a personal, I don't know, what they call notebook in OneNote, just for me and Catherine. And so a lot of that stuff, even though I need and want to have a paper-based version, I'll still do a PDF version so that she can have access to it, or she can print it out in case she wants to, or whatever. So many times I do both.
Okay.
Um, but but I read something, oh, quite a while ago, but they said basically paper lasts longer than digital. If you want to talk about how long is Evernote going to still be current and useful as a digital medium? And it was surprising to me because I thought, oh, digital is forever. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It has a degradation life that I didn't know of, and maybe that's changed. I don't know. This was a while ago that I read that, but they said paper. You can find paper in a tube that people put in there 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But I don't know if 100 years from now your Evernote's going to be readable.
Well, that's a very good point. I've thought about that. I mean, what happens if a company goes out of business? I mean, quite honestly, yes, anything that you have in OneNote or Evernote or any system like that, you can export, but it would be such a nightmare to try to export the thousands of notes and files that I have in Evernote right now. Even if they gave me 1 year's notice that they were going out of business, that would be a problem.
Yeah, no, I know. No, reference material, you know, people have often asked me about that, as you can imagine. And I go, look, guys, you just don't want reference material to wind up clogging up your space. So as long as you have a place to put it, you can find it again. Doesn't matter. It's all digital paper, as long as that's all it is. Just reference. It's just a library. Just how many shelves do you want in your library? Who cares?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it's not a matter. It's just, can you still find the stuff you need? That's just one issue, and got enough room. The second issue. Otherwise, what you don't want, I can't tell you how many hours I spent with executives going through their desk and finding these journals that they kept down in some bottom drawer. It's like, why? Well, I don't know. I might need that. Might need what? And they never curated what was in those journals in terms of data that they could then retrieve in some easy way. And certainly, if they had any actions or anything inside of those journals that they had not yet processed or clarified and organized in terms of reminders of stuff they still needed to do or decide or think about or manage, but those are the only issues.
Thanks, David. David Allen is the author of Getting Things Done. I get to talk with him from time to time about productivity, and I hope that you join us again. Please subscribe down below so you won't miss any of our segments. I've been following and learning about the best methods of productivity for many decades and learning from the pros like David Allen. I've put everything that I've learned into a course on productivity and time management. It runs about an hour. It's on demand. You'll recognize a lot of GTD in the course, but we also go well beyond it to focus on, everything from controlling your email to even how to avoid interruptions at work. Check out the course. It's online, on demand, called Productivity and Time Management. Go to daveedwardsmedia.com and click on courses for more information. I'm Dave Edwards. Hey, thanks for clicking on my video.